All right. Good afternoon or good morning, wherever you are. Back for another edition of the Rotoworld Basketball Weekly Q&A session. I'm Raphielle Johnson, and today we have two other contributors. First, got Noah Rubin, also of Rotoworld, and also our special guest for this week, Dan Besbris of the Old Man Squad. Not too much going on in current events today. First. Hope everybody's doing well. Thank you guys for coming on the Q&A. How's everything?
Well, I'm distracted. How's that? Things are good. Basketball's 2 weeks in. Two very weird weeks, and we already have like 20 important injuries to talk about. So yay.
Yeah, it's obviously a huge day in America. It's the NFL trade deadline, as well as the first college football playoff rankings come out tonight. So I know that has everybody across the country distraught, stressed, trying to see what happens. But and basketball's back. It's been a couple weeks now, so it's not anything new, but it's always fun. I mean, fun is a relative term. 15 games in one day, staggered by 15 minutes. It's fun as an observer. It is a lot of work as an employee that writes about the NBA. But man, it's fun is still a word that I'm comfortable using.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. There are far more strenuous jobs that we could all have than writing and talking about fantasy basketball. So, but I'm kind of happy we get like a day to not really decompress, but you can kind of no games to worry about. You're still looking at injury reports and whatnot, but got a little time to kind of loosen things up a bit, the best you can, so to speak. But as Dan mentioned, we're 2 weeks in. Wanted to go around, get you guys like quick takeaways on the fantasy season thus far. Start with Noah.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a little bit of a shameless plug, but I think it's okay to do. And the article is going to be on the Rotoworld site. But Dyson Daniels has been really good at basketball, and obviously there's a lot more general takeaways we can have. But I know pretty much every fantasy analyst that I know of was very high on Dyson Daniels coming into this season. I have an article coming out tomorrow about a little bit of a more in-depth look at him, what he's done this year, what that means for dynasty fantasy leagues. That I'm pretty excited about, using some fun numbers, some fun film to kind of analyze that. But him, along with some other guys, have been surprisingly very, very good. Not that we were surprised he was good, but he's been, I think, better than expected. Some other guys that have been a lot of fun. Jordan Poole, Buddy Hield, Jalen Suggs has been much better than expected. Nikola Vucevic has been so a lot of underrated guys that have really outplayed their ADP, which has been a lot of fun to see.
Dan?
Yeah. So I got a season opening rant, and I realized that some of the responsibility that leads to this rant falls on my shoulders. But my early season takeaway is that everyone has forgotten that it takes about 6 weeks for players' field goal percent to actually end up where it's going to be. I just like the overwhelming number of questions right now are, what do I do with player X? And it's like some very well-established fantasy player who's shooting 22%. And like the answer every year is just wait. I've in the past, I've called it like the great leveling, I think. And it's around 6 weeks. It's like the beginning of December. Guys' field goal percents start to get back to where they're going to be. Now, the good part is if everybody's forgotten that this is a thing, every single year, there are a lot of buy low and sell high opportunities because of it, specifically for guys that have a little more like name brand recognition than, someone like a Christian Brown who's off to a hot start. But they're all across the board, like really big time, high profile guys. Luka Doncic shooting 40%. Freddie VanVleet was at like 29% until one good game a couple days ago. The names are all out there, and people are in full blown panic 2 weeks into the season. So my show opening rant, my early season takeaway is I need to do a much better job on like the day before the season starts of just doing a show where I have a chalkboard behind me and I just write, I will not freak out about field goal percent 1,000 times until week 6. And then if you want to freak out, have at it. So that's my rant. Everybody relax. We know what these guys are. It's not going to magically change in one season from the last when their roles are not changing either. So hold it together, people. It's going to be okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. We all work in an industry where content is king, and you kind of have to have those immediate and direct reactions. So that I think, for fantasy managers, you certainly need to exercise some patience. Because things can change, injuries, rotation, how a coach handles his rotation, that can change from one game to the next, 1 week to the next. So don't panic. And it's basically what we're trying to say here. And without further ado, we're going to get into the questions, starting with HW, the Portland related question. Toumani Camara, Shaden Sharp, and Denny Avdia, rest of season values, and do you think they'll cancel each other out? We'll start with Dan on this one.
Yeah, so I like Toumani right now as I've referred to him on my show as like a top end filler kind of guy. A lot of his value is tied up in a pretty high steals number at the moment, which I don't know if we know if that's a number that's going to hold. I think he's very playable until Shaden Sharp comes back, and then I hate to give the answer of I don't know, but we don't really know what he's going to be when Sharp is back, and I think it's okay to say that. My guess would be there's probably not enough there once Sharp is in the lineup, and Kamara's probably going to be the guy who loses out the largest amount, at least in terms of playing time. But I see no reason to do like a pre-drop or anything along those lines. In terms of Sharp, probably favors the points league build a little bit more. His percentages were not outstanding last season, or at least the field goal and turnover weren't great. He's not a guy I'm squatting on. I don't think there's enough upside to sit on him. And then Avdia is another guy that probably profiles as kind of a filler level dude, in that like 95 to 135 kind of range where if they play every ball game on the head-to-head side, that's a useful player. Roto games cap, maybe not enough upside to really dive in full force. And then, of course, this could all change after the trade deadline when Portland may have, 6 different players in there. So can I treat rest of season as like from now until February? Because if that's the case, go ahead and stream Kamara. You can stream Avdia. It'll be fine. And then with Sharp, I'm not squatting on him.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting to try and talk about 3 players in Portland that all play the same position, because it's not like, I mean, if we're talking about a playoff team or a contending team, like we kind of know what their rotation is going to look like. But with Portland, it's like Chauncey Billups may say in like 2 weeks, hey, we're losing games anyway. Let's switch up the minutes entirely. So yeah, Kamara's been very good to start, specifically with the steals. I think he's a really good basketball player, like really good NBA player. Like he's going to still be part of the rotation, but maybe he's a guy that they're like, hey, like we know what he is, we know what he can bring. He's valuable, but we need to figure out what Shaden Sharp's like coming off an injury. So let's give him more minutes. So even if Kamara's playing well, he's not seeing the same amount of minutes. Same thing with Avdia, the guy they just acquired this offseason. So canceling each other out is kind of an interesting way of putting it. I think that there's going to be games where one of the 3 plays significantly better than the other 2 when they're all playing at the same time. Should be at least 24 minutes for each of them each game. Is that enough? I think it just depends on your league size too. I think that's another factor to consider. So none of them are going to pop. I don't think any of them are going to be awful. So it's kind of hard to say at this point.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I don't, like you guys mentioned, they all play the same position. So there are 48 minutes available at the 3, I believe it is. So it's like you have 2 of them starting right now, but there's so much that's probably going to change at the trade deadline for this team, if not earlier. They've been a little bit of a surprise in terms of how well they played. Like Delano Banton scoring 20 points in the 4th quarter last night was one of the more amazing things I've seen. It's like he didn't play at all the first 3 quarters, and he plays all 12 in the 4th and scores 20 points. It was something else. So there's so many variables at play with this team. Robert Williams was a DNP CD, even though he was cleared to play. So yeah, Portland's one of those teams where the group we see now, they're going to look a hell of a lot different come January, much less the trade deadline. HW's got another question. Should he drop Yves Missi, or I'm going to assume that's DeAndre Hunter for Denny Avdia? what say you, Noah? Since we got a Hawk being mentioned here.
Yeah, no, I'd be dropping Hunter. I think if you
Yeah.
if you're just looking at Basketball Monster and then you're looking at 9 cap values, like sure, DeAndre Hunter's currently 25th. That's not going to hold. And he's also only played 2 games and probably is going to miss more. He's always had a lot of injury issues. Right now, I think he's kind of carried by the fact that he's hit like 92% of his free throws. I just, like Dan said, it takes time, but things are going to kind of get back to normal. Even if he has a really good free throw season, I don't think it'll be that good on 6 attempts per game. Even me sees still untapped potential there. I think he's still kind of getting his footing in the NBA, but this rookie that has a great opportunity to play a lot, there's no way I'd be dropping him at this point.
Yeah.
You know, this is one of those ones where I think for me at least, it splits roto versus head-to-head strategy. Head-to-head, I don't know how you sit on DeAndre Hunter because there's absolutely no timetable. I think they're still calling it injury management, which is usually a label we get when they sit out a back-to-back, but he's sat out a week and a half. So manage away, I guess. But there's a lot of opportunity in Atlanta. So for Roto, and if I'm not worried about a games cap, I'll sit on Hunter and just see, like, he might come back and take 14, 15 shots a night. But with head-to-head, I don't see how you could possibly sit on a guy who's not that great to begin with and has no timetable. So head-to-head, drop Hunter for Avdia. Roto, I'll sit on the first 2 guys. I think they're more interesting, and we kind of know what the ceiling looks like, at least for Denny. Got to think the Pelicans eventually get a center. I mean, they got to get their whole team back. So sorry, Pelicans. You worry about a center after you get your 4 of your 5 starters back, I suppose. But that's where I sit on this one. I think this is a Roto head-to-head split question.
Yeah, I'm not dropping Messi for that very reason. You know, he's playing alongside the likes of like Brandon Boston Jr., Javonte Green. They aren't going to help him in terms of getting him in position to make things happen. You know, I know some of those guys have put up solid individual numbers, whether it be Boston last night or Jose Alvarado, but to put Messi in positions where he can take advantage of his offensive skill set, as limited as it is, he needs those starters back out on the floor. I think the upside is too much to drop him. And a quick note on Hunter, he had a similar issue last season and missed over a month. So I don't know if we're going to see him anytime soon. Obviously, you can't really assume what's going to happen there, but the suspicious nature of how the Hawks have handled the reporting on this, I don't know if I can trust him right now in fantasy, even with the start he had in those 2 games.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue with you.
Yeah. All right. Jason S. He got offered Josh Giddey for Norman Powell, 12-team, 9-cap punting free throws, and he's got Luka, LeBron, and Şengün on his roster. What are your thoughts on this?
You want me to jump in and step in it? I'll step in it. This one's really tough because we want to talk about nebulous injury reporting on DeAndre Hunter. Kawhi is like the preeminent grand poobah of horrible injury reporting right now. I still think we see him at some point this year, especially if the Clippers can kind of stay afloat, just, stay within striking distance in the West of any kind of playoff spot. So, but I'll admit I have no idea when that's going to be. My hope is maybe by the end of this month, but that might be too positive. And now looking back at last year, when Norm was the 3rd fiddle, meaning one of the main Clippers guys was out, one of Harden or Kawhi or Paul George, he was sitting just outside the top 100. He wasn't quite there. As the 2nd fiddle, we've seen it now, especially with a first guy in Harden, who's more of a distributor at this stage of his career. Norm's been amazing. He's been outstanding. So this trade question comes all the way down to when or if you think Kawhi comes back. Because if you think Kawhi's playing this year, I'd prefer Josh Giddey. If you think Kawhi's just going to do the last year in San Antonio thing where he's mysteriously out for the entire year, then you stick with Norm. I think probably I try to lock up the sort of guaranteed value, and I would lean to going Giddey, especially with the putt free throw. So that's where I'll go with this one. I'm gonna take Giddey, and I'm gonna try to lock in a player that we know is going to have a big role all season long.
I agree with that, and I think on the flip side of the factor of when Kawhi is coming back, you look at what Chicago is going to be doing for the rest of the season and specifically at the trade deadline. So Kawhi, like, I guess it's a comparison. Like, what do you think is more likely? Kawhi Leonard sits out the whole season or the majority of the season, or they trade Zach LaVine at the trade deadline and give the ball and give more minutes to Josh Giddey, or Lonzo Ball continues to miss time / gets moved, something like that. So, yeah, I mean, Giddey, free throws have been a bad category for him. You're not trying to lose free throws, but it's not really going to matter all that much. You're adding his rebounds and assists to Luka, LeBron, and Şengün. Like, you should pretty much never lose those categories.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think maybe a little bit more usage comes for Giddey after the trade deadline when Chicago's kind of, I guess, pulled out of the playoff race, hopefully at that point. So yeah, I'd probably go Giddey.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. I think he gives you a little bit more in some of those supplementary categories. Like, Powell's clearly the better scorer, but he hasn't given you much in terms of like assists or defensive stats. I think Giddey can give you a bit more there. So in a category league, I would go with Josh Giddey. So I know it's a bit boring for all of us to agree, but sometimes it just happens like that.
We'll fight. I'm going to scroll the questions and find one we can fight about.
All right. HW asked another question. Gobert's stats without Karl Anthony Towns, is that normal or will he be better? I don't think that losing Karl Anthony Towns is the only thing at play here. You've got Anthony Edwards taking on that unquestioned number one role. You're adding Julius Randle to the mix. Mike Conley's minutes have been a bit up and down, I think, in terms of not only his production, but the availability aspect, because they're trying to manage him for later in the year because of his age. So I think Rudy's going to be fine. We're not expecting prime Utah Jazz era Rudy Gobert to show up in terms of fantasy value, but I think he's going to be fine as a center for you.
Yeah. Go ahead, Noah.
Okay. He just comparing the numbers from the last year to this year, the rebounds are down, points are down, shot attempts are down, blocks are down, field goal percentage is down. So like looking at it just at face value, it's like, oh gosh, he just simply hasn't been as good. But I think it's just the team trying to figure things out. I mean, it's a very small sample size, so I don't know every single play of every game off the top of my head or how every single game has looked for him, but I assume that maybe there's some other factors in there that have just simply resulted in him getting a few less rebounds or a few less blocks than we can expect out of him. But I don't think he fell off a cliff in terms of value just because they took Karl Anthony Towns out of the equation. So yeah, no, I'm not concerned about him yet. Maybe in like a month or a month and a half. But even then, like you said, Raph, I don't think this is like they took Towns out and now this is how it looks. It's like other things that are factors there.
Yeah, I'm not going to add anything to you guys. He'll be fine. Oddly, he's shooting free throws much better this year. We may see sort of the two things passing in the night as the free throw goes down. Minutes are down about 1.5, 2, but really he's at 1 block a game instead of 2. And all that's going to require is like one day this week, next week, whatever, he's going to block 5 shots. And we're like, oh, okay, now Rudy's fine again. So I think a lot of it's tied up in blocks. I like you guys, I am not worried. We are not going to yell at each other on this question either.
There will be one. We'll find one to yell at.
Dennis asks, is Davion Mitchell worth an ad?
While Quickly's out.
Yeah.
I got nothing more on
that.
You might as well take advantage of those assists, but you're not going to get much in terms of the scoring. I know he's hit double figures on a few occasions, but it's more about the assists and steals. So, yeah.
Yeah, the Raptors are down 4 rotation guys right now. Like, that's a lot. Olynyk's a 20-something minute guy, and Barnes and Quickly are mid-30s, and Bruce Brown's probably going to play 20-some-odd minutes. Like, just play all these Toronto backups and worry about punting them when guys come back, which they will. It's kind of staggered, too. It seems like it's going to be Quickly in like a week, and then Barnes in 2, and then Olynyk in like 3. I don't know what's going on with Bruce Brown. I think it's hard to probably play basketball with that hat on, maybe.
Yeah.
Bruce Brown looks like he's 11 years old. I can't get over that. I know it's not, but it looks Like
when your kid just like puts on whatever clothes,
Yeah.
like go ahead and dress yourself. On second thought.
But he's got a baby face too. Like they showed him
Yeah.
on the sideline during the Raptors Lakers games, and I was like, "Oh, that's nice. He dressed up for Halloween. Good job,
Nope.
kiddo." I wanted to give him a candy bar. Oh, it's fine. He's making $20 million a year. He doesn't care what I think.
Yeah.
Nor should
we have nothing to add to
No, I mean, I'd dress like that too if I was making that much money and I could.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
My wall of Dodgers hats, I might have to upgrade.
All right, John Paulo asked, Jason Tatum or Tyrese Halliburton in ESPN points leagues? Who would you guys rather have with all the doubts about Halliburton's injury and shooting?
Injury?
I think he's talking about the leg issue that kind of lingered late last season into the Olympics, if anything.
Points league, I think I probably would have gone Tatum to begin with. Yeah, are we gonna fight? But I mean, I'll extend the question to 9Cat as well. That one, I think maybe you at least have a more of a discussion about it. But points league, it's Tatum just because he's much more reliably going to score, rebound, kind of the things that are always there. Category leagues, I think you go with more of a like, what do you need approach? Because we're seeing Halliburton looking better. Last 2 or 3 games, he looks more like himself. He's like a top 25 guy after the first 3 or 4 awful ones. I don't know. If I'm just answering the question, then it's Tatum.
No, I mean, Halliburton's done. If you drafted Halliburton, you lost your league. He actually is going to be really bad this year. He's not bouncing back. You lost.
Are you trying to make a trade with someone in your league for Tyrese Halliburton right now?
I'm just going to take this clip and just post it on social media and see what happens. Now, I think your point, Dan, about, percentages needing to kind of regulate, like Jason Tatum is playing, like, just based off 9Cat value, some of the best basketball of his career, top 5 on Basketball Monster. But it's not like he's shooting 55% from the floor. It's his pretty normal percentages, and actually his free throw percentage is considerably lower than it usually is. So it could look even better just by kind of getting back to normal with his shooting percentages. So I'm not, just to actually tell the truth here, I'm not actually that concerned about Tyrese Halliburton, but definitely leaning Tatum in points leagues and probably category leagues as well. But like you said, depending on team build.
Yeah, I don't expect Halliburton to shoot as poorly as he has. You're talking about 24% from 3 right now on a little over 8 attempts per game. I don't think that's going to be an issue throughout the entire season. Also, his assists are down substantially from 10.9 last year to 8 even right now. I'd expect those numbers to kind of get closer to where we expect them to be with Tyrese. But so I wouldn't be too concerned if you have Tyrese. If you're in a category league. Now, Roto, you fall too far behind early, that can be kind of the death knell for your team. But I think right now, if you're in a category league, you will ultimately be okay. And speaking of the Raptors, we go back and Henny Minnie asked, do we think Jakob Poeltl will slow down by a lot? He's gotten off to a good start this season. What do you guys think?
Noah, you want this one first?
Yeah, I can. I'm honestly, my main concern with Poeltl is not that he's going to slow down. I mean, he might be a little bit worse than he has been because he's been really good to start. The free throw percentages has been bad, but it's not like Poeltl level abysmal. It's just been like regular old bad. But I think the main issue with him that I'm kind of concerned with is them saying he's playing too well, and they're kind of like, hey, didn't I just see you turn your ankle? I think you should sit out for 2 or 3 weeks. I think I saw you turn your ankle. I think you should, we don't want that to get any worse. So you should sit out for a bit. So that would be more of my concern than him just dropping off a cliff production wise, because he's been really good to start. And there's not really anybody taking minutes from him, or he's been doing it with Davion Mitchell at point guard. So it's not like, he hasn't had his primary playmakers either. I don't know. I'm happy with how he's played so far. I'm not expecting him to be significantly worse after this.
Yeah, I think maybe we see his minutes dip a little when Olynyk comes back. Because they probably didn't want to play him 32 a game or whatever he's at right now, 32 and a half. But he was always a really safe center to grab in that kind of 80. I think he was going around 80, 85, somewhere in that neck of the woods. I like Poeltl. He's probably not going to stay top 40, but he's going to be solid enough. So I'm with you guys. I'm not super worried about it. Maybe dips back by 1 or 2 rounds, something along those lines. Free throws and just like general overall how long he's on the floor. But he was always kind of a nice, fun grab in that center range, especially once, guys like Zubats got pushed up 40 slots. And I still ended up with a lot of Walker Kessler, but he got pushed up 40 slots. Pirtle was the guy who was like, hey, you want to push me up the board at all? And fantasy drafters were like, nah, you're good. So he fell to me in a bunch of places. And yeah, I feel fine just kind of riding it out.
Yeah, I think he'll just ultimately be where he was expected to be in terms of his draft value. So it's not going to be a situation where he just suddenly falls out like the top 150 or something like that. So I don't think he'll slow down by too much, even when those starters return to the lineup. Also, would you trade Rudy Gobert for Bam Adebayo, even if Gobert was better for my build last year with punting free throw percentage and 3-pointers?
This is sort of a question. I'm gonna do the thing. Sorry, Heaney Meanie. I'm gonna answer your question as if you're not asking me about a punt build. That's how I'm gonna do it on this one. I would prefer Bam over Gobert in a vacuum. I think we all probably would. I don't know why you'd trade for a guy who's not as good of a fit for your team. So you specifically, Heaney Meanie, keep the guy that's the right fit. That's how you win fantasy. You don't have to get the guy who's going to be ranked a little higher. But for the rest of you guys, you should probably be going for Bam. I don't know that, Raph, I don't know the right way to answer this question.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like that was last year. This is now. But if you're trying to go for the same build and it was successful for you, I would probably hold on to Gobert. If you're having some success with it right now. I think overall, I'd prefer to have Bam just because of his importance offensively to the Heat. He finally knocked down some 3-pointers. So what we saw in the preseason wasn't a complete mirage, but yeah, I would prefer Bam. But again, if your build from last season is something you want to carry over and it's working, why mess with something like that? If it ain't broke, it don't fix it.
I mean, I still think I'd rather have Bam, even if this was my punt build. He's not a horrible free throw shooter, but he's been worse than he usually is so far. He's shooting 65%, which is down from 75% last year from the free throw line. He's hitting half a 3 per game, and he's starting to hit more. He's starting to space the floor a little bit, but adding in a better player that also hits a 3 per game, I don't think is an issue just because you're punting threes. It's not like you're wasting somebody hitting 3 threes per game. He's, maybe going to hit one, but I still think I'd just rather have Bam and his upside and his talent over Gobert. Even if, because I don't think he poorly fits a punt free throw, punt 3 build.
Yeah. I don't have much to add to that. So
we can get some pushback going. We can get some fighting here. Need it.
All right. Chad, thanks for checking in the chat as always. On to a question with Caleb Martin looking like he's not going to be a big scorer. How concerned are we that the other stats will dwindle with Paul George back and maybe eventually Embiid? Is Martin a sell?
I don't know if you can get anything for Caleb Martin. I don't mean to be Buzz Killington over here. But I think the word you're looking for is drop and not
drop. Yeah.
This might be a deeper league, I guess. Yeah, he's not going to do much, and he's not a good shooter, and he's not a great free throw shooter. A lot of things need to break right, and if they weren't breaking right with both Paul George and Embiid out, they're not going to break righter with as they come back. I mean, he might be a little bit more efficient, I guess, but also the minutes and touches and all that is going to dry up. So, Martin is not a sell. Martin is a cut, most likely. Sorry, I didn't mean to in like that. I just
no, you're good. If you're able to sell, I would sell. I mean, if somebody wants to trade for him, I'm not going to say no to that. But I think it's also, like I have no problem dropping him at this point either. I mean, he's still starting, which is a little bit encouraging. And Embiid swapping him for Drummond isn't going to change that when he's back. But he's not going to see that many shots as the probably. I mean, he's the 5th scoring option in that starting lineup with Oubre and Maxey as well. So no, he's not a guy that you have to hang on to. But if you can trade him for somebody, do it.
I think the one thing that would give me pause is Nick Nurse saying that he's one of their 5 best players. So even if he wasn't going to start, which was the case to begin the season, he was going to play starter type minutes. So I think that would be the one reason I would consider holding on to him in a deep league. But when you have George Embiid and Tyrese Maxey on the court, it becomes a case of how much chaos can you create in your role, because the scoring's not going to be there for you. And it's averaging half a steal and half a block right now. 0.8 steals for his career, 0.4 blocks. Those really aren't areas of like expertise, so to say, for him. So I think at that point, you may be looking at a drop, or maybe you try to move him now if you're in an extremely deep league and possibly get something back. But yeah, I think the days of his fantasy value being what they are probably going to come to an end, even if the playing time is there. HW asks, well, RJ Barrett, will he sustain the assist with Quickly and Barnes back?
No.
Nope.
Nope.
Nope. It's been great to watch him, but I wouldn't say I'm scarred by the time in New York, because he did a lot of good things there, but this isn't the RJ Barrett I grew accustomed to seeing. And I don't think we're going to see it throughout the course of a full season once you get Barnes and Quickly back on the floor.
Yeah, his usage is just out of this universe right now. Yeah. 22 shots a game, 6 free throws, 8 assists. Yeah, that ain't. And with all of that, taking as many shots as like the top 3 guys in the NBA, he's still an 8th rounder. So ruh-roh, but he's great for points leagues. Have at him in points formats though.
And I think the one silver lining here is that we have no idea how long Quickly and Barnes will be out, because they haven't really given a true timeline on Quickly and Scotty Barnes. I think they said it like a 2-week reevaluation because it wasn't going to require surgery, I think.
Yes.
Okay. So like it's at least 2 more weeks of the assist. So enjoy it. It's not, when everyone's healthy, it's not happening.
All right. Fahad asks, should I trade my Luka and Jeremy Sohan for Ja Morant and Jason Tatum? Head-to-head points, 10-team league. What do you say, Noah?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it could depend on how standard your scoring is, like maybe, but I think with how much better Ja is than Sohan for points leagues, I think maybe you lose a little value going from Luka to Tatum, but you make up so much of that with Ja. So yeah, I'd rather have the 2 top 15 guys than the 1 top 5 guy who hasn't been great to start, and the other guy who's, I don't know exactly where he'd rank in a points league, top 100, top 75 maybe.
Yeah, I think I'd lean towards yes also. If Ja was any worse in this trade, if he was a player that was not quite his level, I probably would have said no. And the fact that that's what pushes it over the finish line means that this is actually a relatively fair trade, because Luka's an absurd player in points formats. But I'm with you. I mean, Ja can also be a top tier guy. Tatum's going to be a top tier guy. So yeah, go get 2 superstars. I mean, I don't think you're going to regret whatever decision you make here. But go get some big names. That's fine.
Yeah, I'd make the trade, especially if you can do it and the person doesn't know that Sohan injured his thumb last night.
Oh, good call, Raph.
Yeah.
Forgot about that one.
Now, I shouldn't be encouraging that type of shenanigans, but you know, hey,
dumb stuff.
If you can get away with it.
Well, they haven't said what happened really either. So
yeah, we don't know exactly the severity of that thumb injury and how long it'll be out, but I think I would make this trade personally. All right, Drew asked, after how many losing weeks typically before you recognize your team isn't good enough and start offering trades? This kind of goes back to the panic point that Dan made to start the show.
Yeah,
so I mean, kick this one off.
You sort of have to, you kind of have to extrapolate a little bit on what your team should be versus what they are. If you're losing and your big guys are all performing adequately, you probably want to make a change fast. You know, lean into strengths. If we're talking head-to-head, Roto, you try to shore something up, find out what your extreme weaknesses are, and pick whether you want to blow them up or try to fix them. But if you're sitting on a team where I don't know, like if Halliburton was your first round pick and you lost your first week and you lost your second week and you got very little out of your first rounder, that's one where I would say, wait a little bit. See what your team looks like when Halliburton's getting you 11, 12 assists a game. Is your team now a team that's going to win assists every week? Because when he was getting 5, you probably weren't. At 20, 20, whatever it is, assist jump for one player can actually make a really big deal in whether you win your week. So that's probably the simplest way to kind of pare this one down. Look to see if your big guns are firing. And if they are and you're still losing, make some changes. But if you got some guys that you drafted early that are just underperforming and you know they're going to level off, give them a chance to level, then try to make that. But stream like a lunatic in the meantime, because you don't want to lose that many weeks in a row.
Yeah.
Then you got another problem to worry about, even if your team starts to play better.
Yeah, I think it's about how or why you're losing, which is kind of along the same lines as what Dan was saying. But I think another thing is you have to consider if it's a head-to-head league, like who you were playing against. Like, did you just happen to get unlucky and play against a couple of huge, massive performances from the other team's players? Like, your team is playing really well, but you just ran into a couple 40-point games or something like that. Or you ran into Wemby this week and you lost because, he wasn't very good week 1. And then he had 9 blocks last night and a couple other weeks where he had or games with massive block numbers and like the 5x5. Like, did you lose because of things like that? Where it's like, okay, if you would have played any of the other teams in your league, you would have won. So it's like, yeah, it still stinks that you got a loss because of that. But how concerned are you about your team versus, hey, had I played anybody else, it would have been fine. And if it's a points league, like, are you 0-2, but the second highest scorer in the league? Like, you probably can't do too many other things to improve your team at that point. So, yeah, how you're losing is a lot more important than just losing.
Yeah. It's a good way to put it. John Powell asks, would you rather take Bam or Alperen Şengün the rest of the season in ESPN points leagues?
Points leagues, I think I'm going Şengün. Category leagues, and I know that everybody's going to hate me for this. Category leagues, I might still go Bam. But that's because I like to win free throw percent. It's a stat that I attempt to usually be very good at. But points leagues, I think Şengün running away with this one. Like, it's not even remotely close. 9 cat, I think it's pretty close, and I just barely lean to Bam on that one.
I think I would go Şengün regardless of the format. I know we're talking about points leagues here, so technically we're not disagreeing on this question, but
I found
looking
something
at
we could disagree on.
Yeah, just trying to find something just to argue about. But looking at the numbers here, so on Basketball Monster, they're 49th and 50th in 9 cat leagues. Bam has played an extra 3 minutes per game. Şengün is either, it's pretty comparable across the board. Şengün's actually been a better free throw shooter this year, but I think that's more about Bam shooting bad than Şengün shooting good. I think the main difference in their value is the fact that Şengün's turning it over almost 2.5 times per game and Bam has less than 1. But yeah, I think I would go Şengün regardless of format for the rest of the season, because I don't know exactly how Ime Udoka is going to, approach his playing time for the rest of the season, because it hasn't always been consistent. But if we can see Şengün get closer to 32 minutes per game and they kind of figure out how to use him properly, like they're both shooting about 44% to start. So there's room to go up there. So it hasn't been great for either, but I don't know. I think I'd rather have Şengün, especially in points league. We'll just leave it at that.
Let's fight. I'll take Bam.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I think one of the reasons that concerns me about Şengün, you mentioned the minutes. They've been playing Jabari Smith Jr. at the center position at times. And you also have Steven Adams. I don't think Jabari is a center. Now, they have the defensive-minded wings to kind of cover for some of the issues that come about when you have that lineup. But I don't know. I just have a hard time seeing Şengün getting the minutes to where he's a clear pick over Bam. I know Bam's going to play mid-30s per night. Şengün may give you a bit more in terms of like the assists and the playmaking, but I think I would prefer Bam in this spot, to be honest with you.
A good battle indeed.
Yeah. Respectful battles only on this channel.
I mean, we can take personal shots as well, but no, I'm just kidding. I mean, kind of, but like Şengün did just kind of tear apart Raph's Knicks last night. So I
He
think
did.
maybe that's why he's going with Bam.
Cat picked up 3 first quarter fouls, and they put OG Anunoby on Şengün. So that
Nice.
context, I believe, is needed.
No Jericho Sims, huh? Oh, Knicks. Maybe the Knicks should get a bench.
I don't want to say anything bad about Jericho Sims today, so I just want to move on to the next question. Brian,
Today of all days, you know,
That's right.
on the day of
we're pushing
trade
love
deadline
over
for
here,
the
man.
NFL.
The day of my daughter's wedding.
In 12-team 9-cat head-to-head leagues, who's the drop? Clint Capella, Santi Aldama, or Bobby Portis? Interesting.
Oh, I'm gonna poop on multiple players on this list.
All of them, all 3. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, I'm holding Portis, especially with Giannis out right now.
Mhm.
Capella's so boring. Can I choose Capella because he's barely playing? He's barely doing anything this year. I'm gonna go Capella. He's like the least fun player, I think, to roster in fantasy sports right now. He was, I think we all talked about this. He was a pretty easy fade this year. You could see his role decreasing over like the last 3 years in a row. There will be days, and then the days that Okongwu's resting, Capella still isn't doing anything because Larry Nance is popping in there and playing better than he is. I'm dropping Capella, even if Aldama is more of a injury replacement level guy. I'm dropping Capella because he's so boring, and I feel like it's only going to get worse.
I agree. I think, Okongwu is obviously the guy seeing the starter level minutes when they're both available. I think Capella's played more than 24 minutes twice this season, and one of those was one of the games that Okongwu missed. He had a double-double, Capella did, in 29 minutes against the Kings, and Okongwu played. But other than that, Okongwu missed the New Orleans game, and Capella played 21 minutes. And then their last game, they lost by 30, which limited his minutes a little bit. He played 17. So I'm not going to say it's the last time the Hawks are going to get blown out this year, because they tend to be kind of iffy from game to game. So, Okongwu's been playing more minutes and is the better center. It's mind-boggling why they continue to start Capella, not because he stinks, but because Okongwu is better. I think he feels like he has significantly less upside than the other 2.
Yeah, like it feels like he needs a trade, especially final year of his contract. But I can't even guarantee that his production will increase once he is traded. So, I think Capella's the easy drop of these 3 options here, especially with Giannis being a bit banged up in Milwaukee. So I would definitely hold Portis. I believe in Aldama. I think he's played well enough to continue to get solid minutes moving forward. So, Clint, we love you, but go. Sean Paulo, Anthony Davis being consistent but injury prone, and Wemby posting crazy numbers but being more volatile. Who would you rather have in points leagues?
I'll go Wemby. That's my short answer on that one. I'll go Wemby. Like, you want the guy that's going to go completely insane. I don't have deep thoughts on this. AD's been awesome, and he was like the main target for me in 9-cat in first rounds almost everywhere. But you got to go Wemby. You got to go with the guy that can break the system.
I think I'd rather have AD I think that's something that is not an unpopular opinion until he gets hurt. So hopefully he can continue to stay healthy like he was last year and has been so far this year, for the most part, because I do like kind of having the more consistent thing. And I think Wemby just had a couple of bad games early on. I don't think Wemby's just, this completely inconsistent player, but even if he is, he's like, has he turned 21 yet? I'm not sure. Like, it's okay for young guys to be a little bit inconsistent. That's not a knock on him. So I think I would lean AD, and I don't think that you can't go wrong though. They're both good. I think.
Wemby will turn 21 on January 4th. So we're getting there. But I think I'd go AD as well, just because obviously the Spurs are going to build things around Wemby, but you're also counting on the players on the floor to understand that they're building around him. I think Chris Paul certainly gets it, Harrison Barnes as well. But some of those younger guys concern me a bit in terms of getting Wemby the touches he needs in the spots where he's at his best. So Davis, I see no such concerns with him in LA. He's clearly the marquee guy for them offensively. Like Noah said, it's just about staying healthy at this point for him. All right. Matt Boyer asks, barring a trade, what is the ceiling for Nikola Jovic in Miami? Do you see him staying in the starting lineup?
I'm not sure I care. Yeah, go ahead, Noah.
Well, it's so annoying that he does start every game and doesn't always see starter level minutes. I remember writing about him. I think maybe it was like one of my dynasty columns I did. But I'm like, you choose to start him. He's this young guy with a ton of upside. And then it's like, oh, we'll play him 13 minutes this game. And it just kind of varies game to game. So the answer to the question, do I see him staying in the starting lineup? Like, yes. Do I see him playing starter level minutes? Who knows? We'll see what Eric Spoelstra decides to do tonight. Like, that's just the way it is. I think his ceiling is tremendously high. I think he's a very talented player, can impact a number of different categories, but he has to get the opportunity to do it. So you're at the mercy of Eric Spoelstra.
Yeah, I have the same answer. He'll start, and it doesn't matter. He played 12 minutes in their loss to Sacramento last night, despite starting. And it wasn't like it was because Jaime Jaquez came for his minutes or anything. Some dude named Pell Larson, who I hadn't heard of until yesterday, came for like 25 minutes. And Alec Burks picked up big minutes for someone the night before. And like, there are 4 guys on the Heat that are locked into starters minutes, and there are 8 guys that are all fighting for the scraps. And he's unfortunately one of those 8, and you just don't know who's going to get the hunk of meat on any given night. So I don't think you need to roster Nikola Jovic. It's going to be too goofy.
Yeah. All right. Who's the better pickup, Ayo Dosunmu or Bub Carrington? And he's dropping Podziemski for one of those two.
Well, I mean, the cop-out answer is it depends on if you need something very fast or if you need something over a longer haul. Because right now with Ayo, you're getting the Zach LaVine absence game, which is great. And I don't know if LaVine's going to miss another one, but if he is, Ayo's basically a sure bet to have nice numbers. But Bubs look good. I've been intrigued by his fantasy line. You're seeing some points, some boards, some assists, a few steals mixed in there, good percentages so far. The Wizards are awful, but they're kind of fun from a fantasy standpoint. So I don't know. I mean, this is that same thing again. Roto games cap, I probably take Ayo and hope that I can drop him in there for a Zach LaVine missed game. But if I'm looking long haul, I'm going Carrington, because eventually it's not going to matter that Brogdon's out. And plus, come on, guys. We know Brogdon's going to come back and play 10 days, and then he's going to be hurt again. So this isn't really a thing we have to be worried about. Kuzma taking some usage away from guys is maybe the bigger thing there. So I'm going Bub. Who's with me? Who's coming with me?
I think I'm gonna hop on the Bub hype train, because I was trying to think of more of a clever Bub pun, but I couldn't off the top of my head. I didn't want to force it, but he's been getting better. I think he is going to have rookie struggles, rookie inconsistencies, but I think I'd rather deal with the occasional 2 for 11 shooting night than try and figure out the 4th, 5th option in Chicago's guard rotation. I'll say 4th, but it's that you're just at the mercy of somebody else getting hurt to open up some minutes. This one, it's like they've made it very clear, which I wish more NBA teams would do this, because it just makes sense. And I think fans appreciate when you do it and say, hey guys, we're not going to pretend to be a playoff team this year. We just drafted 3 guys in the first round. We're going to play them and allow them to get better. And instead of saying, oh, I want my team to try and win these games so that maybe we can win 30 games this year. Like they're like, wow, okay, I get to see these young guys develop, and hopefully in 3 years we're a playoff team and this experience is going to mean the world. And it feels like this is the first time, especially this early in the season, that a team has done this, this intentionally. So doesn't matter how bad or good it's going, Bub Carrington is going to play a lot of minutes this year, and I think that's fun.
I agree with that. Another Bub Carrington question. Bub or Scottie Pippen Jr. for the rest of the season? 16-team league. I want Bub. Give me Bub. I like what Scotty's done thus far, but as Noah said, Bub's going to get to play through his mistakes. Even after Malcolm Brogdon's healthy enough to play, I don't see him taking away too much from those young guys in terms of playing time. So, yeah, I'd like Bub Carrington in this scenario.
Yeah, I think I'll join you with Bub. Scotty's gonna have a nice run here with Bane and Smart out, but let's go Bub. Let's go long haul.
Yeah, I agree. I think in a 16-team league, maybe there's a scenario where you can keep both because even without starting, Scottie Pippen Jr. has had some very, very good games, and that's fun. I don't think he's a guy that I really want to drop at this point. I would lean Bub if you have to drop one, but if you're in a situation in a 16-team league where you're choosing between those two guys to drop, then your team must be doing pretty well so far.
All right. Cats in Oakland, thanks for tuning in. Roto format. Is Drummond worth keeping?
I'm holding him a little bit longer. He's been a massive disappointment filling in for Embiid. And I'm still sort of closing my eyes and dropping him into lineups. But the real answer is it doesn't matter. You can drop him if you want. You can start him if you want. I'm starting him in Roto leagues, but I don't think you have to.
I mean, I think if you were willing to draft him originally, he's doing about exactly what you expected him to, and he's grabbing rebounds and getting some steals, and that's about it. So at this point, if you drafted him, just hold on to him until Embiid gets back, unless you're just at this point we're either having higher expectations for him or are just very frustrated with what he's done so far.
Raph, you want us to go lightning round on some of these?
Yeah, we're going to go ahead and speed this up because
cool.
Running short on time. Would you guys drop Jose Alvarado for Al Horford or Amin Thompson? 12-team Roto. Thank you, Lester.
Yes. My answer is yes. I'm a Horford guy for Roto.
All right.
I don't think I would. I'm trying to. I think I would rather have these games of Alvarado as a starter than Amin Thompson off the bench or Al Horford doing what he's doing.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Like Alvarado is going to be like a poor man's Fred VanVleet in terms of the shooting accuracy, but the minutes are going to be there. So I would hold Alvarado right now. All right. Admiral Nita. Trade Devin Vassell or Brandon Miller for Dyson Daniels and Grady. Everyone on their respective rosters aren't healthy, so a lot of questions. 12-team 8-cat format.
No. Keep Vassell or Brandon Miller.
Yeah.
I think I might, if it's the package of both, I think I might do it because one, I love Dyson Daniels, and two, Grady Dick has been phenomenal, and it's not just points and threes. So I think I would actually do it. I don't know which one I'd prefer between Vassell or Miller because individually they're both better than the other two, but Vassell's injury question mark. I mean, they're not exactly sure when he's coming back, but it's going to be soon. I don't know. I think I might do that.
Lightning round, Noah.
Sorry, Dan. It was such a good question. I wanted to spend all my time on it. I'm sorry. I will do lightning round from now on.
Vassell is ramping up, so he could be back some point. He won't be back on Wednesday, that's for sure. Last game of their road trip, but it could be shortly thereafter. 12-team 9-cat. Hold Tari Eason or swap with Ayo Dosunmu?
Hold.
Is Mark Williams worth stashing in my IR slot long term? 12-team points leagues. Man.
Yeah. I am.
Sure.
Grumble.
No.
Unless you have someone else to put in it, might as well.
I'm tired of Charlotte's injury reporting.
Yeah, what I can't swear. I'm not.
We should just boycott the Charlotte Hornets.
That's right.
All right, 12-team 9-cat head-to-head. Alex Caruso or Tari Eason? Give me Tari.
Tari.
All right. How are we thinking about Dennis Schroeder rest of the season? Hot start, slowed down a little, still high usage / minutes, but likely a trade deadline candidate.
I want to answer the question as it's written, which is how are we thinking about Schroeder? Well, eating chocolate strawberries, of course.
God.
That's how. No, I'm if you can get someone inside the top 70, I would do it. Otherwise, just ride it out.
Yeah, he peaked already. So Lightning.
No. All right. Okay. 12-team 9-cat punting free throws. Herter, Drummond, Finney Smith, Bob Carrington, and Patrick Williams. Bub's one. Yeah.
Drop the rest. Bub.
Yeah. He's the one appealing option here. Drummond can have his moments, but you're really dependent on when Embiid is available or not. Herter.
He's been pretty good, right?
He's been solid, so I think I'd go Bub, Herter. Finney Smith had a good game last night, but I kind of wonder what he's going to be once Claxton is playing starters minutes again. Claxton did start on Monday, but there was no Ben Simmons. And if Claxton's going to be the starting center again, as he should be, then you wonder where they're going to fit Simmons into the rotation. So I think I would go DFS 5th with Patrick Williams 4th, ranking those 5.
No one I are just feeling Bub.
Yeah, and I think Herter fits perfectly with the punt free throw percentage because he has yet to shoot a free throw this year. So
he's fully punted free throw shooting altogether.
Yes. After watching Jazz versus Bulls, should we be streaming every front court versus the Bulls if we are chasing rebounds? Absolutely.
I think this is an interesting one, and I'm sorry this is not going to be a lightning answer. I will try to make it a lightning answer, but Chicago's actually second in rebounds per game in the league. Okay. And I remember now, and so I'm looking at the stats, they play the fastest pace in the league, which is something that was absolutely unheard of last year. So I think just kind of in general, it's not because they're a bad rebounding team, but they are just a fast-paced team, which means more shots, more rebounds. Utah's 5th, so I think maybe that's why it looked even better in that matchup, but yeah, I think it's pretty good logic there.
John Collins getting 31 minutes. That's good. Yeah. All right. Trading BI, Miles Bridges, and Walker Kessler for Devin Booker and Jalen Johnson. 12-team head-to-head points league. ESPN.
Yay.
Yes.
Do it. Get it done, man.
Good thoughts.
All right. Does the Sohan injury potentially bring new life to people who thought Castle would have a big role if they sell out? Presumably, Keldon Johnson moves into starting 5, and Castle is first off the bench now. I don't think so. I think Julian Champagnie, he started the third quarter last night. I think he's the one who will end up getting a boost here. So, yeah, I don't think – I think Castle will be okay, but he's a long-term play. Keldon Johnson, we know what we're getting there. Outside top 100 pretty much. So, yeah.
Some threes.
I second this.
And Vassell will be back within the next few weeks, I'd assume, which, probably cancels out anything from his Sohan absence as far as Castle goes.
All right. Who would you choose, Zach Edey or Denny Avdija for the short term? Give me Zach Edey. He's now playing fourth quarter minutes. I believe he became the first rookie in NBA history to put up, I think 20 and 10 with 90% shooting from the field and 100 from the foul line.
He had 4 blocks too, right? Something like that.
Yes. Yeah.
And a 3.
Yeah. Edey.
Short term, long term. We're team Edey all day over here. Who's a drop between Drummond, Horford, or Aldama? And he has Embiid rostered.
I think you could drop Drummond then.
Yeah.
I'd agree.
9-cat, 12-team. That really doesn't change for me. I'd drop Drummond there. I dropped Anthony Black for Tumani Kamara. Did I goof? How safe is Kamara's role rest of the season? I don't think he goofed.
No, you're fine.
That wasn't a goof. Like, Black's offensive production has been really volatile, more down than up. So, yeah, I don't think he goofed at all. Kamara's role, we talked about that earlier in the show. I don't know how safe it is. But I think he'll get rotation minutes because he plays defense well. He'll be fine, I think. All right, Dynasty League. Scoot Henderson or Bug Carrington in redrafts. I'm thinking Bug, man.
Ooh. Yeah. Oh, Bub. I'm gonna answer the same way again. Bub.
Redraft. Scoot still for Dynasty.
That tracks.
For now. His leash just keeps getting shorter and shorter with how I'm feeling about him.
All right. Do you think Bilal Coulibaly will be getting defensive stats?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think he can. Yeah. He'll be all right.
He's had a steal already. I know it's not earth-shattering, but it's not like it's at 0. He's 1 steal a game.
And I think that'll go up.
Yeah.
Okay. And we'll go ahead and wrap up with this question from Joseph. Trae Young, Darius Garland, and Şengün.
Whoa.
10-team 9-cat, and he's not punting any categories.
Trae Young or Garland plus Şengün. Give me Trae.
I'm taking the 2 players over the 1.
You're getting 2 good players for 1 elite fantasy player. I think they can both be very good fantasy players too. So yeah, I would take Garland and Şengün.
Nah, I don't want him. Give me the elite.
Valid. But I mean, Garland has been much better. I think anybody that wasn't expecting him to bounce back was just like, I mean, it was inevitable. Now he is shooting 52.5%. I don't think that sticks, but yeah, I think I'd rather have the 2 over the 1, especially if Trae Young continues to play like he freaking did last night.
I'm waiting for an update on the rib sprain.
I think they just chose a couple random buttons to put out their tweet just to kind of say, hey, he's not playing anymore. He's got like 2 points and 3 turnovers. Like he's sitting down. We're down 30. So because I don't, can you sprain a rib? Like maybe I just don't know. And like, that's very like much a real thing. I've just never heard of it. And I think they just kind of chose, where was it? Right. Random body part rib. What did it happen? Sprain. Okay. Tweet it out. Cool. Trae Young's done. He's in the locker room.
I love that wheel of madness injury reporting. I love it.
All right. Well, this has been fun, but all good times must come to an end eventually. Thank you again to Dan Besbris, the Old Man Squad, for being our guest this week. Thank you, Noah, for hopping in, answering some questions as well. We've got our weekly Rotoworld Basketball Show podcast, myself, Noah, and Dan Titus, tomorrow afternoon. Thank you all for tuning in, asked some really good questions, and hopefully Milan beat Real Madrid right now. So thanks again for tuning in, and enjoy the rest of your Tuesday.